Good day, podcast community. PeteKane here, Podcast Pete, and certified lifestyle coach. Now, we have a special guest in the house today that I want to introduce you to. So, Brent, I know you, but for our community, would you share who you are, what you do, and who you serve? And then we'll get into our podcast.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Pete. Thanks for having me on. Yeah. So my name is Brent Harrison. I work with a ministry in Ball Ground, Georgia, just north of Alpharetta area. It's called Restore. And the definition of restore is to bring back to original intent. So I do pastoral counseling, life coaching, and spiritual direction just to do that, just to help people get back to the original intent that God had for them. This world distracts us in so many different ways. And people lose sight of God's original call and passion on their life, why they're here, what they're made for. Could have challenges in marriage or relationship, job, you name it. And so I just help them to get a little bit more perspective on where they are with God and what he's up to in and through their lives. And it's just a really awesome 4 years I've been doing it, as you know, because you were part of the church that I was at. I was at that church for 10 years prior, and then was in missions for 10 years prior to that. So over 20 years of pastoral ministry. And I just love working with anybody who's wanting to get in a closer relationship with God and others.
I love that. I've watched your journey from afar, and I do see in my travels, we're serving, we're out there and I see it as pastors and ministry leaders, because they're serving at such the highest level. They want to do it with such passion and excitement that they tend to go overboard on burnout, and I don't know who said this, but I read like there's so many pastors getting burned out that are leaving the ministry.
Yes.
So tell our viewers, like, what are you doing that helps them reconnect with a more, I don't want to say balanced, because it is a little bit of balance, but what do you see out there in your position that you could share with us in our community?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing attention to it, because it's real. Burnout is real. Pouring out more than you're poured into is real. And often it happens, like in my case, it happened where I didn't realize I was burnt out until it was too late. I didn't maybe there were some indicator signs, maybe there were some things there, but I didn't realize it until it was almost too late. And fortunately, God redeemed that part of my life and that story, which he does always, if we'll allow him to. But the statistics are staggering. After my recovery from burnout, I did some research on it, and it was unbelievable how many pastors and ministry leaders are leaving every year because of burnout, because of things like infidelity or you name it, just falling away in whatever category. And it's because we pour out more than we receive. And Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Abide in me and you will bear much fruit. And I think we get it backwards. I think we try to produce a lot of fruit for God, and instead of him producing the fruit through us. So what I focus on, especially with pastors and ministry leaders, nonprofit leaders, what I focus on is soul care or self-care. And it's not selfish to care for self.
Yes.
It is. I grew up believing that it was selfish if I cared for myself. And I couldn't believe further from that these days, that the more I'm able to care for myself and be in the healthiest, holiest version of me with the Lord, the more I'm able to care well for my spouse, my kids, my church, my community. And so taking care of yourself is a really big deal. And I've learned, Pete, in this journey that people just don't know how to do that.
Yes.
They just don't know how to do it. They know how to binge watch Netflix, or, they know how to go play golf to escape, which I love golf. There's nothing wrong with that. They know how to escape, but they don't know how to really rest, like soul rest, receive from God and whatever he wants to. I think he's always wanting to offer us something to what is he wanting us to offer. And if we can what is he wanting to offer us? So if we can put ourselves in a position to receive from him, to listen to what he might want to offer, I think we'll be in a lot better shape.
Yeah, that is so prevalent. I see it. If we go over into the secular business community, I'll talk to people and I'll say, your business won't grow beyond your growth first.
No question.
I think we get that backwards, whatever it is in ministry. We're serving the kingdom and we're just like going at it. And if we don't, like you shared, like we have to escape because we're so drained, and we'll do the Netflix, we'll do the infidelity, we'll do the things that pull us in a bad place. When you get, because I love when I see groups together, like at a retreat, and I'll see it on LinkedIn. So talk to me about the importance of community in that regard, like getting them together. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's huge. I used to kind of sometimes poo-poo community, and it's like, oh, it's overdone. But the more I'm into it, the more I realize we're communal beings. We're created to be in community with one another. Mm-hmm. And we actually need each other. We're designed to need each other in a healthy way, not in a dependent, insecure attachment way, but in a really healthy way, to bless one another, encourage one another, to build one another up, to help each other see what we don't see. If I had people that could help me see in my life what I don't see, and there's a lot that we don't see, and for people to be able to point that out in a healthy way, and for me to be able to own it in a healthy way is really, really important. I think of Pete's, Scazzero's book, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality and Emotionally Healthy Leadership. I think we forgot how to be emotionally healthy.
Yes.
And spiritual health and emotional health, I think, are really closely connected in that. So so the part about community. So I also partner with a ministry called pastorcircle.com, and we just offer a space for pastors. I hear this all the time from pastors. They say, I feel like I'm on an island. So they're in this bubble, right? They have it's their people, it's their church, it's their elders, it's their staff, but they can't really explore what's going on in their own lives outside of that bubble. So we just provide them a space and a place to connect with other pastors, to journey alongside. We provide them really clear opportunities and invitations for soul care, whether it's retreats. We do a lot of retreats, whether it's just like once a month. So we ask for 3 hours a month for your soul care. So in that 3 hours, we have a large group time where we have somebody like a Dr. Kurt Thompson share with us. Recently, we had one of my favorite authors, Trevor Hudson, share with us. So that's a 1 hour. Then we go into a large group session for 1 hour. And then 1 hour during the month at their choosing, we offer spiritual direction, which I'm coming to believe is probably the most important missing link in the church today, is that one-on-one spiritual direction with a certified, trained spiritual director. It's huge.
Yeah, that is so good. What would you say when it comes to your routine? Give our viewers a little idea of like, how do you prepare for your day?
Yeah, so when I had my burnout moment, it was about a little over 4 years ago. It really started in a really simple way. It was an invitation of God. He gave me 3 words: rest, receive, and respond. And so that's kind of my motto for how I start a day. I start by resting in God, whatever that looks like. So when I was so burnt out, I couldn't read scripture. I couldn't listen to worship music. What God invited me to do was sit on the back porch and look at birds. I'd never noticed birds in my life. And I know that's an indicator of getting old. I'm aware of that. But I've never noticed birds in my life, but the Lord spoke to me so powerfully through just watching birds.
Yeah.
And reminding me the scripture, how much more do I take care of you? The birds of the air, the flowers of the field, how much more do I love you? So
Yes.
just stopping and long enough to receive whatever God wants us to receive. And then he invites us to respond. I realized that I was probably living a life more of reacting than responding.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus says, I only do what the Father tells me to do. I only go where he tells me to go. I only say what he tells me to say. But we usually, I'm speaking for myself, react to our circumstances rather than responding to what God is inviting us. So our schedules can become overblown, too chaotic, too much,
Yes.
because we're just reacting to whatever our circumstances are.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, you said birds. I went up to see my brother and stayed at my nephew's. And about a month ago, a person shared with me an app called Merlin. And
Use it every day. Yeah, I love
yeah,
it.
and so like last Saturday, I'm out. I always noticed the morning there was 18 different birds
Yes.
that were out there, and it was like incredible
Yes.
to, like you say, just to, and I was not like that in my early years, and it wasn't until actually my stroke that I slowed down. I had 49 days to think. And
Yep.
it was like I was always just go, 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 go. And it wasn't until that slowdown period that I really started to discover a different person.
Yep.
But it is so, like my nephew had a bird feeder that had a camera on it, and we're seeing the birds, like the different ones come
Yeah.
in there. And it's just incredible to just something as simple as all the birds, and I never noticed them all. I would
Yeah.
hear them occasionally, but never really sitting in rest,
Yeah.
really enjoying that. Not my afternoons now are on the porch, listening, watching them come up to the bird feeder. What would you say when you look at your journey and you look at the like 4 years ago,
Hmm.
what was like when you all of a sudden discovered the burnout?
Yeah.
What was the first part of that journey like? Because it's the journey of 1,000 miles. That first step is always the toughest. What was that like that you could share with us?
Uh, it was beyond rough. When I finally confessed and admitted that I was beyond where I'd ever been in capacity, uh,
Mhm.
I collapsed. I mean, I went into, some people call it the dark night of the soul. Some depression set in. I have a history of depression, family history of depression, and that was triggered again. Um, just a lot of, I use the word confused. I felt just totally confused. Like, which end is up? What's right? What's wrong? Who am I? Where am I going? What am I doing? Those kind of things. Fortunately, my wife was an incredible support. I mean, she was off the charts, just right by my side, and stepped up in a huge way, which she would say, God just granted her the grace for those days to see
Mhm.
me through that. But it was, what I really, looking back on it, Pete, I,
Mhm.
I feel like it was kind of a detox moment. If you think about somebody detoxing from drugs or alcohol or whatever, I think I was detoxing from all the stuff that I was carrying that I was not meant to carry.
Mm.
All the stuff that I had put on myself, or that I had, thought was my responsibility, or that I had to do. I have to provide, I have to do this, I have to do that, all these things that I was carrying, that are, some of them are legitimate, but the weight that we put on ourselves is usually more than what God asks us to carry. It's often more. And so I felt like I was literally detoxing from all the junk, whatever the junk was
Yeah.
that I had like had entered into my body, my mind, my spirit, my soul. And there was a lot
Mhm.
that I just needed to detox from. And that was, so after, it took a good month or two of really, I mean, dark days,
Mhm.
dark days. And I had a lot of people praying for me, and I had some good people, coming over and encouraging. But most of the time I spent it curled up in bed, just wondering, how's this gonna, how am I ever gonna be me again?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can. I empathize and I understand that journey because there was a lot of dark times in my life, and I very much was so in that I wanted to isolate because
Yeah,
that's the worst thing you can do, but it's the first thing you do.
sure. Yeah.
So how difficult was it when you're in that dark place to reach out? Like, because we want to encourage people to do that, but sometimes they don't know what that looks like because they are just in their own dark place.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you realize who really matters to you and who really cares about you when those times of isolation and darkness come in. Because
Mhm.
the few people that you actually want to let in for whatever reason, and some people, if they're honest, would say, "I don't have anybody. I don't have anybody." I had a few, less than a handful of people that I felt close enough with that could come sit by my bed and pray with me to
Mhm.
understand what was really going on. And so that was huge. But isolation is, I think, one of the number one tactics of the enemy.
Mhm.
I feel like I needed some isolation time just to kind of, I don't know, be alone with my thoughts and be alone with God and let Him, kind of the garden moment, like cry the tears and scream the longings and desires out. But eventually you need people. And so I'll never forget it. One of the greatest gifts of my life was after I was crawling out of the dark night of the soul and started to have hope again, and I was reaching out for what was next. And I was given a name of a guy in Phoenix, Arizona. His name is Danny Mullins, and
Mhm.
they said, "Call this guy and share your story with him. I think he can help." Well, I call this guy. He answers the phone, and I tell him my story, and he's just laughing. And I'm like, "This is not a funny story. Like, this is kind of a sad story."
Yeah.
But he was laughing because he saw what was ahead for me.
Uh-huh.
And he was in Phoenix, Arizona. He said, "Where do you live?" I told him where I lived. He said, "Oh, I'm going to be 30 minutes away from you tomorrow teaching a class on
Wow.
spiritual direction. Why don't you come sit in my class and see if it's something you might be interested in?" So God used a random guy and a random phone call and a class that I sat for 2 years in that God used to completely change my life.
Mm.
And I say today that if it weren't for those series of events, I mean, it's God's grace
Yeah.
over and over. But if it wasn't for those series of events, that phone call with Danny, going to that class the next day, uh, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I feel like I genuinely am living, maybe for the first time in my life, the abundant life in Christ. I feel
Mm.
like I'm living my best life.
Yes.
And I think sometimes there's a great book called The Critical Journey that helps you kind of identify your stages of faith and
Uh-huh.
part in everybody's journey where they'll come in contact with a wall, where their faith just doesn't feel like it's working for them anymore.
Yes. Yes. We have a friend, Glenn Pearson, and
Yeah,
you
love
know,
Glenn.
he was in town, I guess, a couple months, 3, 4 months ago, and so we went out to dinner, and and I always try to tell him this, that a lot of people will say, "Hey, let's get together," and they just say it,
Yeah.
and Glenn does it.
No
He's
question. No
intentional.
question.
He's intentional about leaning into relationships, calling people, checking in with them, seeing how they're doing. And the conversations are not just sports, how's the weather? They're how is your soul?
Yep.
How are you doing?
Yep.
And he gets into the really important, meaningful conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, Glenn, I love that you use the word intentional. I don't know that there's a more intentional guy than Glenn when it comes to investing in people. I think a lot of us sit back and wait for mentors to fall into our lap.
Yep.
And if there were more guys out there like Glenn that knew that they had a gift of God to offer others and went after that, like, gosh, there's so many people that are hungry and thirsty for what Glenn has to offer, and other, men who've been through it have to offer. And we all need that. I tell people I do counseling, life coaching, and spiritual direction, and I have a counselor, a life coach, and a spiritual director.
Yeah.
So it's important to have those things. We can't just talk about it. We have to live into it.
Yeah, and there's that. I think it's a built-in. I don't know if it is or not, but so I'll talk to people. When this was a couple years ago, when I was podcasting first, and then I hired a coach, and I got such clarity, and it changed me that I wanted to be one.
Yeah.
And so I'm like the first 6 months of that, asking people that I'd been on podcasts about, would they want a strategy or discovery call? And so this one guy, I just laugh. He goes, he's talking, and I know him and his son.
Yeah.
So he said this to me. He said, "Have you looked at my resume?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it looks good."
Yeah.
He said, "Are you trying to sell me coaching?" I said, "I am trying to give you a perspective, a blind spot that sometimes we don't see." And I said to this, what if Michael Jordan, because what if Michael Jordan said, "I don't need any coaches, I can just do my own thing"? He would have been a good scorer, but would he have won all those championships? But he kind of humbled himself to say, "I can use some help."
Yeah.
What do you see when people have that ego? Guys, primary, I see. Yeah. They're just grinders. They can figure it out. They don't need any help. What do you say to those people is it a discovery, or is it something that you can share with them that gives them a different perspective of that journey?
Yeah, I mean, usually, unfortunately, those guys that are grinders and just making it happen all day, every day, usually they don't have time to listen to what you might offer or what God might offer. And I kind of jokingly want to say, well, here's my card. Call me when it happens. Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I mean, whether it's a midlife crisis or getting fired from a job or, a divorce or whatever, you're going to hit a wall at some point. You can't just keep grinding that way, because we weren't designed that way. We weren't created that way. So I think you used a great word, humility. I think if we all just had a little bit of humility to seek out the more that God has to offer us, whatever that is. And for most guys, it really is. The more he's offering us is less.
Yes.
To just slow down. You said it earlier, for you before your stroke, like to slow down, to watch the birds, notice what's happening in your household.
Yes.
Not everything is urgent. Not every text message, phone call, email is urgent. Just so I carry this little cross with me. I have it in my pocket almost every day because I intentionally say, okay, Lord, is this mine to hold? Whatever is mine to carry, this thing that's weighing on me, is this mine to carry? And I realized really quickly that most of the things that I ask him if it's mine to carry, he says no. So I'm just carrying. Usually we are carrying more than we're designed to carry, more than we're supposed to carry. So are we stopping long enough to ask, what is it? Another thing I would add too, Pete, that I think is a really big thing with especially leaders in ministry is they ignore their desires, the desires of their hearts and their longings. They sometimes die to what their desires are longing, because they've got to get the task done of whatever. Sunday's coming, or we've got to do this, or we've got to do that. And what happens is sometimes passion and calling and desire in them, they end up doing something that they never really wanted to do anyway, and they lose passion and desire. And I think stopping long enough to say, what do I want? What am I created for? What am I in? Am I living my fullest, freest life right now? Or am I just on this rat race? Am I just going? So I think just taking some time to analyze that. And again, that's what I think spiritual direction, a once a month, 45-minute direction session is priceless for things like that.
That's so good. I had this book, and it's not on my back shelf, but it's by John Maxwell, Thinking for a Change. And it was written 2002, maybe three, and I'm rereading it. And, I loved it when I read it years ago, but I think it's even more prevalent today than it was back then because it's getting faster and we're reacting and we're like consuming 2.5 hours of TikTok videos, and we're not having that thinking time, that prayer time, that meditation. How do you slow down to have that critical thinking that's so, like you talk about soul care? What do you do that maybe you could share with our community that has been helpful for yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's learning your own rhythms, like what works for you. What works for me doesn't necessarily work for everybody.
Yeah.
But porch time is huge for me. So
Mm.
getting up in the morning and sitting on the porch, watching the birds, being quiet, being still, those are huge for me. After work, a good rhythm for me is going on a walk. My mentor taught me how to cold plunge. So doing a cold plunge helps after work to kind of, reboot your system a little bit. But for me, sitting and being, whatever being looks like. So sometimes it looks like reading scripture and listening to worship music. Sometimes it looks like going on a walk or going to Gibbs Garden, looking at the flowers. Sometimes it looks like fishing or golfing. But whatever being looks like for you, being a human and not a human doing. So I think that's really, really important. Just having God take you to rhythms that he's inviting you into to slow down enough to just be a human.
Yeah. Having grown up dyslexic and ADHD, I had the active brain, but I didn't know really dyslexia because I failed more tests than I passed, and I was a slow reader, and now I'm a speed reader, and I've used different forms of AI to accelerate my comprehension. So I read almost a book a week, and I probably would start books and never finish them.
Yeah.
How are you using AI to help Brent?
Yeah. To be honest, I don't use it a ton
Mhm.
because I don't want it to be a crutch. I want to have original thought. I want to have original. So more than anything, if I use it to try to deepen a knowledge in something I'm curious about.
Okay.
So say I have a client that's struggling with insecure attachment. I may ask AI some specific questions to help me better understand that circumstance or something like that. So I use it really to help deepen the knowledge. Be honest with you, there's been a couple times where there's a book that I've wanted to read and haven't had time to read. So I've used it to summarize books for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the key points of this book? Things like that. So I don't use it a ton. I really want to be intentional about original thought. I don't have anything against it unless you're just losing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Depending on
Easy too.
yeah. Yeah.
My partner, I think you even were on his podcast, Jeff.
Yeah.
But this was about 3 years ago, and he was saying, Pete, how are you using it in your daily life? And I said, I don't have time for that. I just, I'm like, hey, I'm enjoying getting to know my podcast guest and having a fun time. But then something shifted. I putting structure together, misspelling words and all that kind of stuff I struggled with. So I put a course together. This was about 3 years ago. And I asked it to give me a framework, and I put different things into it. And it spat it out. And I was like, almost fell out of my chair because it had taken me a year to do that because that is not my skill set. And so now I do it in different ways, but I think it's HI, human intelligence, will always be there. Yeah. And it's so easy to get in that consumption mindset of letting AI just do all your thinking, do all your processing, and you just can lose yourself, like you said.
Yeah, no question.
We always want that connection to who we are, how God created us, unique individuals in his image. So what would you say if you had to a 20-year-old Brent, you're talking to him
Oh Lord,
now.
pray for that. Pray for that guy.
And what would you tell him? What advice would you give a 20-year-old Brent, knowing what you know right now?
Oh man, it's a great question. My first response would be you be you and learn more and more who God created you to be.
Mm,
So I was so insecure most of my life. I didn't know who I was. I always felt like I was kind of a late bloomer. I was always on the fringe of friends crowds or whatever. I mean, I was a decent athlete, but I just never really knew who I was.
mhm,
And I think I would have probably been a lot more intentional about. I would encourage myself at 20 years old to be intentional about who are you, who has God created you to be, and go after it. Go
mm,
after that, and unapologetically.
mm,
Don't try to be somebody you're not. I mean, you and I were at church with Craig, and I used to think, man, if I could only preach like Craig, or if I could only do this, it's like I'm not supposed to be him. I'm
mm.
supposed to be me. But when you
Yes.
see people doing things better than you or smarter than you and have more money than you just get caught in that trap. So
Yeah.
I want to encourage that 20-year-old Brent to be fully you and be free there. Be
Mm,
fully free to be you, and don't let anything hinder that. And find people that will help you deepen that. I told a guy the other day, he was one of the first pastors that kind of launched me into ministry. Had lunch with him the other day, and I said, I just want to thank you because you saw Christ in me before I saw Christ in me. You
mm,
believed in Christ in me before I did. And because of that, I'm where I am today. So thank you for believing in me before I ever had an idea of who I was. So I
mm.
just think it's huge to have people speak into your life like that.
Yes, that is critical. What do you think what are you most excited about this year that you could share with us?
Yeah, I'm always excited about anyone who's willing to get any kind of help.
Mm,
Um, So I'm excited about these 24 pastors that are going through Pastor Circle with us. We have a 10-month cohort that we have them on. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about just different churches in our area. There's something brewing in our area that I feel like has been for a couple of years,
mhm,
in the spiritual formation, spiritual direction world that I'm super excited about. I can't put my finger on it, but there's this kind of ground up swelling of people desiring to experience more of God's rest, more of God's
mm,
peace, more of his joy, slowing down like we've talked about.
mhm.
Yeah. So anyone who's desiring to seek the more of God, not prosperity more, but like more of the fruits of the Spirit of God, and more of who they are, like discovering who they are, saying this isn't working. Like my marriage is not working right now, and we need help. Or this job is killing me, and I
Mhm.
need help. So whatever. I can't remember the quote, but that we all need help, and until we're vulnerable enough to ask for help, then good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is so true. I want to be respectful of your time. So I have tell our viewers first, how can they get a hold of you? How can they get more of Restore and
Yeah.
what you're doing and the impact that you're making?
Yeah. So our website is restore dash or hyphen intl.org, restore-intl.org. And you can learn more about what we do. I have several folks that work with us, contracting and working with us to do counseling, life coaching, and spiritual direction. And then pastorcircle.com. What we really desire is to just invest into pastors. They're pouring out all day, every day. We want to pour into them. And to be honest with you, this year we have 24 pastors we're investing in, and only half of them can afford the cohort. So we're subsidizing half of that, and we need donors to be able to do that. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think it would be so cool if somebody in their church said, I'll sponsor my pastor to make sure his soul is cared for.
Yes.
Surely there's one person or a group of people in their church that can come up with enough money to make sure their sponsors, their pastor is truly cared for.
Yeah.
So those are the two ways that you can get in touch with me.
That is so good. I want to encourage our community to share this, because I think what you just shared, we have the community, and we want our pastor, they're teaching, they're pouring out, they're just doing everything. And like you said, that soul time, just, taking care of themselves is so critical. And if you want your pastor to be healthy and have that, share this with people that can maybe come alongside Restore and provide those financial resources to really put it in a place that's going to make a significant impact.
Yeah.
So absolutely. So I could go on. I was telling you, the person before, we got caught afterwards talking, and I've had 2 cups of coffee. If I don't take a break now, I'm in trouble.
Yes, please go potty break.
Okay, tell our viewers, what is the one thing you would want our viewers to take home from our time on this podcast?
Yeah. Whatever it takes, you be you, restored to the original intent that God created you to be. Whatever that means. If something's off, take the first step to be restored back to original intent, to be the fullest, freest version of yourself. So whatever is suppressing or oppressing that, do something about it. Take a first step towards that. And there are people that can help with that.
That is so good. Brett, I want to thank you for the impact you're making in the community of our pastor care, our ministry care. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And thank you for being a guest on our podcast and sharing with our community your journey and your story. We appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Honored.